Corn Crib on Haunted Mound. Cheesy title, but it's a good story. The farm I live on is quite old, as some of you know. Around 100 years old to be exact. My great-grandfather owned this farm, and 4 others a very long time ago. He was forced to sell 4 of them during the Great Depression, but came out of it with money in his pocket, unlike most people. This farm was passed down to my grandfather, then his father, and then me. So there is a lot of history on this place. Anyway, the farm includes the original corn crib. For those of you who don't know what a corn crib is, just imagine a building that looks like a barn. It is about 40 feet tall, it has 2 sides that are devoted to corn storage. They are like big bunkers, where whole corn is stored after the harvest. The middle of it is a big drive-through gap. There is a grain elevator system running from the ground, up to the top. And at the very top, there are big holding areas for various grains. So basically, you could pull your wagons into the corn crib, open a hatch on the ceiling, and let the grain flow out with ease. It was a very good setup back in the day. These days though, the corn crib is an old, decrepit building. I have been meaning to have it burnt to the ground for a long time now, but I never got around to having the fire department demolish it. It is old, and missing boards off the sides where the corn ears are held. I keep an old skid loader parked in the middle. The upper part of the building is still in great shape though. The first thing that I found really weird about this building is the lack of pigeons. Pigeons run rampart around these parts. They inhabit anything that could be considered shelter. The beasts live in my machine shed, nursery, old confinement building. They will not go near the corn crib though. It's just so weird. It would be a perfect shelter from the elements. Alright, enough of this boring backstory shit that most of you probably skipped anyway. My first problem with the corn crib happened when I was around 8 years old. This thing was like a jungle gym to me. There was boards draped around in it that I could swing from, or walk across. And if you crawled up the ladder all the way to the top, you could get a perfect view of everything. So, I was out there one day, playing around in it, when I decided to venture to the top. This was not something my dad wanted me to do. It was very dangerous. I started to make my way up the ladder, which is about 1.5 feet wide, so it's not an easy climb. I get up about halfway, and hear noise below me. I kind of peek over my shoulder and see nothing. So, I keep moving upwards. I felt a hand wrap around my ankle and pull me down very hard. I start to fall. Not such a good thing. Underneath me was piles of sheet metal. I frantically grabbed for the ladder as I plummet to the cuts and boobies that waited below me. I finally get a grip on a rung and stop myself from falling. At that point I'm pretty much in tears. I'm shaking as I'm trying to get out of there. I made it out and went to the house. My father asked me what the hell was wrong. There was no way I could tell him what I was doing in the corn crib. I didn't want to suffer the wrath of his belt. I don't remember what I told him, but it wasn't what I was doing. I had no clue what had happened in there. In the end I just put it off as me slipping, and my mind playing tricks on me. I still played in it whenever I could. Being on a farm in Iowa, there just wasn't much to do. Years flew by, and I stopped playing in it. I did however start using it for better activities. Shooting pigeons. Pigeons. I hate the things. They shit all over the buildings they get in, and drag nest crap with them. They just make a big mess out of anywhere they inhabit. So by the age of 15 or 16 I think, I had taken to shooting them from the top of the corn crib. It was a perfect deal too. I could sit at the very top, look right out a window towards the hog nursery, which they loved to live in. They would pop out of the vents on the top and bask in the sun. That's when I would pick them off with an old .22 rifle. Then it was off to the foxhole by my creek, where I would leave the pigeons for the hungry fox and her pups. Heartwarming in a twisted way, huh? So, one day I was up there, picking off pigeons, having a grand old redneck time. I was doing great, everything was peachy for a late fall. Then it got humid. Going from 50 crisp degrees to humid in an instant is weird. Most of the shit I read, people say it gets cold. Well, I don't know if ghosts are choosy or what, but it gets humid around here in my experience. So, There I am, sweaty now while wondering what is going on. I feel the 2x12 I'm sitting on hop up. Like if someone had picked up one end and dropped it suddenly. This wasn't a good thing. It was a good 12-foot drop to the bottom of the grain bins up top, and I was on a board set over the gap. I set my rifle against the elevator, and look around. There is nothing near me. Then it happens again. This time I get tipsy and have to grab the board with both hands. Fucking thing started doing it really fast now. As if someone had hold of one end and was banging the board up and down. I was filling my pants by now. I just held on for dear life. It seemed like it went on forever, but it stopped after about 20 seconds. As soon as it did, I jumped over to the ladder and made my way down. After I got down, I realized I had left my rifle up there. A mint condition Remington Nylon 11, that my dad had given me from when he was a kid. No way was I letting the frost that night get to it. So, I was forced to go back up the ladder to retrieve it. I reach the top, and go to grab the rifle. It was fucking gone. I just stood on the ladder in shock. The thing couldn't have fallen anywhere. I get up on the board that I was sitting on, and cautiously walk across it, while holding the beam above me for assurance. I go near the second grain bin, look down, and there's the rifle, propped up in the corner of it. Well, what the mighty hell. I do not trust those grain holders. There's no real support under them. So, I really didn't want to walk on it, or put weight on it. I didn't have much of a choice though. I pulled the old makeshift ladder out of the first grain bin, and lower it into the second one. I slowly make my way down the ladder. I reach the bottom and put weight on the floor. It creaks a bit, but seems solid enough. I start slowly walking towards my gun, and reach it just fine. I pick it up and examine it. Everything on it is fine. I empty the round out before I sling it over my shoulder. I turn around just in time for the ladder to hit me in the fucking face. Imagine if you will, someone is up where I just came from and pushed the ladder off where it was leaned against. That is what happened, but it clocked me. Now I'm in this grain bin, bleeding out of my forehead like a stuck hog. I'm pissed off, and scared. A nail had caught me right below the hairline. I still have a scar/bump till this day on the spot. I set the ladder back up and scrambled back up it, to be met with hot horrible breath in my face. Goosebumps raced over me, but there was nothing in front of me. I quickly hauled ass back down to the main floor, making sure to step on a fucking nail in the process. At that point I'm more or less hopping across old sheet metal and tires. I get out, and just lay on the ground panting and in pain. One trip to the hospital later. I have 3 butterfly stitches in my forehead, and a nice tetanus shot. That corn crib seriously fucking hates me. My father brings me back from the hospital later that night. We pull into the drive, and the corn crib is worse than when we left. One of the huge doors on the front of it is laying on the ground, and the other is twisted off to one side. He pulls up to it and shines the truck's lights on it. We get out, and I hobble over to it. It looked like the door that was laying on the ground was ripped off out of the metal slide it was in. After further inspection we could see that the metal it was mounted on was bent outward. As if someone had ran a vehicle through it and pushed the door out. We were both baffled. My father chalked it up to the age of the corn crib. I on the other hand knew this wasn't anything natural. I didn't feel like standing near this thing anymore that night, so I went inside and tried to sleep as best as I could. Many years later, I was outside in the summer grilling, cooking up some good Iowa chops. I'm not one for cooking with stoves and ovens, so I mostly live on a grill diet. It's around 10 o'clock at night. It was a great night too. Stars were shining, there was no wind, and it was about 72 degrees. It was perfect. I'm standing there, taking in the good atmosphere when I hear this noise. It came from the corn crib of the damned. The building is around 50 yards from my house, so I look up over the grill at the building. I see nothing out of the ordinary, but that noise is still persisting. It sounded sort of like a raccoon, or some other large vermin. I hate raccoons, skunks, opossums, whatever. All those things could have rabbis, which I don't want around my farm. So, I kept my eye on the corn crib. This noise just kept going on, with a few breaks in between. Then the screaming started. Oh God, that noise. It was like the critter that was in there was getting sliced open by a dull blade, but mixed with the sound of an old woman screaming her lungs out. Something started banging around in there, as if concrete blocks were being thrown against the walls of the building. I grabbed my big light and shine it up into the only window near the top facing me. I see two glowing eyes for just a half a second, then they went down back into the building. Oh, what the hell? Those eyes. They glowed a bright white. Here's the really fucked up part. The light I was using was some 1,000,000 halogen spotlight. It lit up the side of the corn crib like daytime, but that window was just pitch black, save for those horrible eyes. The noises didn't stop after I used the light. That shit continued for a good minute. I was very antsy at that point, to say the least. I didn't know what to do. Should I run inside and cower, or stay out here and make sure whatever is in the corn crib doesn't steal my pork chops? So I stayed with the food, cooked it as normal, but kept my senses at their peak. When they were cooked, I shut the grill off and walked inside. Each time I got through one of my 3 doors leading into my house, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand, and had an adrenaline rush. It felt like something was about to grab me whenever I had my back turned. I'm sure you all know that feeling. I know that I ate some of my food, but couldn't stomach it all after what I had just witnessed. The next day I went to the corn crib to investigate. By this time I had taken all the sheet metal out, and replaced it with the skid loader, some old tires, and other random items. It was still bothersome to get to the ladder, but I made it. I cautiously climbed it up to the top, and peeked around inside. Blood, everywhere. Like if you had water balloons filled with blood, and threw them against the walls. I looked down into one of the grain bins, and there lay the remains of something in several pieces. I think it was a raccoon, but I'm still not sure to this day. It was kind of charred black. It was caked in blood, and was mutilated beyond recognition. I look around at all of this blood. I didn't think you could get that much out of a small animal. Well, I was right. I look in the other bin and there is a pile of dead animals. They all looked about the same. At this point I'm thinking the chupacabra or some shit is living in my corn crib. I am in no mood, or good state of mind to clear the remnants of animals out of the building. I just make my way out of there, and stay the hell away from it for a while. Still, every night I go outside I can hear what sounds like fast, skittering footsteps in the building. Also agonizingly long scratching noises, and what sounds like celery breaking. That breaking noise just echoed throughout the farm. I'm a complete fucking moron. Because I went back inside the cursed building a few weeks later. The light was on inside of it. This single bulb that is 30 years old was turned on. How in the hell does that work? I don't even have power running to the building anymore. This should have tipped me off. But nope, I'm pretty dumb like that. It was at night too. Oh goody. As soon as I get inside of the building the light goes off, and I hear quick running in the upstairs part. I leave. Fast. No way am I getting dragged upstairs and slammed against walls, till I am a red stain. I back away from the corn crib, and towards my yard light. Something at the top catches my eye. I look up and see that the old glass globe around the lightning rod is glowing. This really beautiful color. Something I've never seen before, and still haven't seen to this day. I'm just standing there, mesmerized by this glow. I couldn't pry my eyes away from it. Hawks whispers in my ear. I whip around and see nothing. I'm doing a full 360, but there is nothing around me. Enough of this shit, I say to myself. I started screaming and cursing at the top of my lungs. I was getting pretty sick of this scary shit. I went on a pretty rage-induced tangent for quite a while, until my yard light went out and it turned complete pitch dark. Oh good, a mercury light goes out on a whim. It sure was my lucky night. I walked back to the house. Not ran, I walked. I heard shit behind me, clomping after me. I didn't turn around. I just kept swearing up a storm. The noise would get right up behind me then stop. Then about 10 feet later it would repeat. I got to my house, opened up the first door and shut it. My second door opened for me. Oh dandy. I get into it, and close it. The third door was locked. I had to kick it down, which was easy, with how old it was. As soon as I got inside I felt at ease. Whatever was fucking with me must not have followed me inside. The inside ghost that I still deal with was probably territorial or something. He gets to fuck with me inside, while the other gets my outside time. After that night, nothing much happened for a while. I would still hear the random noise from the corn crib, but nothing too big. Friends that I would have out would hear stuff, and get a little freaked out. None of them wanted to go into it, no matter how plastered we were. One night however, we sort of saw what was in there. We were standing around the good old grill at about midnight. It was a severe case of the drunken munchies that drove us to grill top sirloin. It was a calm early fall night. We all stopped talking because the banging had started in the corn crib. My one friend asked if there was an animal in it. I told him to wait and see. So we watched intently. Instantly the one door left on the front flew over to the side and out came this huge black figure. It was hauling ass towards us. Imagine, if you will, a buffalo running full speed at you. That's what I would compare it to. It got within 20 feet of our scrambling asses, before it took an immediate turn right, and plowed into my cornfield. You could see corn stalks bending in the moonlight as whatever it was took off through the field. I went from shitting myself to laughing at my friends, who were terrified. I had somewhat gotten used to this shit by now, so it wasn't much of a surprise to me. They all left shortly afterwards though, for apparent reasons. I kept an eye on the crib that night though, but didn't see the thing that came out of it return. The morning yielded a great thing. The field had a nice path cut through it. The path was about as wide as a large SUV, and went in about 30 feet then just stopped. Real nice of that thing to wreck my perfect field so close to harvest. That was the last major incident with the corn crib. Since then I just hear noises, and see a moving shadow in the window on top, but that is about it. So there you have it. The story of the corn crib. I hope you enjoyed it. I have plenty more to tell. And an update to the story about the asshole ghost in my upstairs. I'll do those sometime soon here. Pictures. So, I trudged my ass over to the corn crib, through the blistering wind. And that's what leads us to the first picture. This is the beast itself. Around 100 years old, and still standing. At first glance, you might be thinking, that doesn't look safe to go inside of. Well, you're right, it's not. If you look at the very top, you can see the lightning rod, with the glass globe around it. That's the thing that was glowing that one night. Also, notice the door that is on the front of the building. As you can see, it is split in half. One section is sitting in the middle of the opening, while the other is barely hanging off to the side. That blackness up towards the top is the window that I saw those eyes in, and that I still see stuff moving around in. Here is a side view of the corn crib. You see that large opening at the top? That is my destination. That is where the bad shit happens. Well, guess it's time to move on to the next picture. Here is the inside of the ground floor. As you can see, it is very messy. It is full of crap like old tires, boards, a metal grain bin, and a skid loader cage. The vertical gray things you see are the elevators that tote the grain up top. In between those is where the ladder is located. So, I cautiously made my way through the crap into the ladder. I tilted the camera up, so you can see what I have to climb. I noticed that there is now a board above me, perched between two other boards. Upon closer inspection, I can see that it has been ripped from the wall at the top. I made my way up the ladder to the top, and whipped out the camera to start taking pictures. No go. The brand new batteries were dead. That's when the swearing started. It's not easy or safe to get all the way up there, and it was fucking cold and windy. So, I made my way back down, and spent a good half hour looking for new batteries. I ended up having to steal some from a flashlight. I made my way back into the corn crib, and to the top of it. The first picture from the top is of my trusty old 2x12 board that had a jumping fit while I was sitting on it. As you can see, it is covered in snow, and is over the gap between the grain bins that I would talk about. Also, while I am taking these pictures, I am standing on a single ladder rung that's not too big, as you will soon see. Well, I plopped my ass down on the 2x12, since it seemed sturdy as ever. I then snapped a picture of what was directly below me. I'd have to fall through all this shit if I slipped. I peeked out of the window at the very top, and snapped a picture of the view outside. That red building is where I used to shoot the pigeons that polluted my farm. The top of that yard light pole you see, is about 35 feet at the peak. So you can sort of gauge how high up I am. I swing over and take a picture of what I'm holding onto this entire time. The ladder just isn't really that big at all. I look upward, and see the light poking through the ceiling of the corn crib. At this point, the very top is about 10 feet above me still. You could continue up the little ladder, but I wasn't going to do that. It's only nailed to the side of the rickety old elevator. Speaking of the elevator, here it is. It is a simple design. Small metal buckets on each side of me. They operate with a belt and chain that attaches to a wooden pulley. They have gotten quite rusty over the years though. I muster all the testicular fortitude that I can, and grab a hold of a chain swinging in front of me. While holding on to I lean out over the first grain bin in hopes of taking a picture. As you can see in the picture, the bottom is covered in snow, about 2 feet worth I would estimate. I glance down and see something odd. To me it looks like a bunch of blood splattered onto the snow below me. What makes this strange, is there is no evidence of animals in the corn crib at all. No footprints, feces, or nesting. The splattered stuff in the picture is spread out over a 10-foot square area. I glance over to the right, and notice something sticking out of the other grain bin. It's the dastardly ladder that smacked me in the face that horrible night. As you can see there isn't much to it. It's a bunch of old boards nailed to a couple of 2x4s. Here's what bugged me. The last time I was up here, it was sticking out of the other grain bin, the one with all the blood or whatever in it. Upon further inspection of the grain bin with a ladder in it, I see some things. Also, take notice that I'm standing on that old 2x12 at this point. Not fun at all. Anyway, the shovel that is in the bottom was not there. I have been looking for that shovel for about a year now. How it got up there, I don't know. I also notice that the window is busted out and laying on the floor of the bin. The last time I checked, the window was fine. There wasn't any glass missing out of it, and it was still mounted in the window up top. The white round thing that's sitting next to the shovel is what caught my eye next. It's a skull of some kind. Probably from one of the animals that got thrashed up there. Now, do you see all the black chunks of whatever? That is the charred animal remains that I was talking about. Most are still hidden under the snow, but as you can see, there is still some visible. Next I kind of hung over the side of an old plank, and took a picture of the holding area in the corn crib. Each side has these. They used to house entire ears of corn. Now they are used for storing old firewood, and other such things. You can see though, why I called it a jungle gym though. There is all sorts of stuff for a kid to hang from / play around on in it. Before I left the corn crib, I made sure to walk over to the one end, and take a picture of what I call the den. This is in the upper part, and I won't go in there. I never have, and probably never will. Right when I got close to it, I heard creaking in there that wasn't caused by the wind. It sounded like something slowly pacing around. I quickly snapped a picture. You see that? It's really fucking dark in there. The rest of the corn crib is always lit up on the inside, but not that space. It's been pitch black in there, for as long as I can remember. Well, there you have it. That is the corn crib in all its glory. This post more or less turned into a rural exploration, but oh well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I might even develop enough balls to take some pictures in there at night. But before I leave, fan service.